thank you so much for being here today. All of you know who I am, but let me just introduce myself to all of you. I'm Debbie Lynn Toomey. I work at Tufts Medical Center, and I've been a nurse for over 30 years there. My role right now at Tufts is under the trauma department. And under that role, because we are a level 1 trauma center, one of the ones in Boston, there needs to be an injury prevention coordinator. And that's who I am, that's what I do. And a lot of that work centers around going out in the community and doing a lot of education to help prevent injuries. So my role is to keep people out of the ER. So that way they could live a life that's healthy, independent, and also empowered. So I do a lot of programs, as you all know, Stop the Bleed, Aging Strong, but today is all about stress first aid, how we can manage our stress, especially during these times, And so the title of the program is Stress First Aid, and actually since the last time I did this program, I added window of tolerance, and I'll explain that more later on, but these two principles really help enhance each other. So this program is inspired from the work of the National Center of PTSD, and that was because of all of their support for the military. So let's begin. Overview of the program is basically I'll define what Stress First Aid is, or SFA, and I'll explain what stress is. Just like the word love or happy, all these, it's a concept, right? And there's so many different definitions of these words. So I'm going to define or give you one definition of what stress is, and also describe what the stress continuum model is, discuss the window of tolerance, and explain the essential SFA skills and how the window of tolerance can support each other for managing stress. And also I'll share with you RAC, recognize, act, and know, and how you could use that to approach managing stress. What is stress first aid? It was adapted from the Navy Marine Corps Combat Operational Stress First Aid, COSFA. The stress continuum model was developed as a visual tool for assessing an individual's stress responses and forms a foundation for both COSFA and SFA. Mouthful, isn't it? So basically, it's all about having you realize that when we experience stress, there's a continuum that we go through that we're not really aware of sometimes, that when we experience stress, sometimes if we're really aware that we were just triggered or we were just upset, that we try to do something to help soothe or cope with that stress. And so this continuum model is more of a visual way and also a nice reminder for us to think that, okay, we may experience stress, but it doesn't mean we have to fall off the charts and become or fall into that despair level. We can always self-correct and take care of ourselves in real time, so that way we can go back to feeling better, or at least a little bit, more in control. So it was designed to reduce stigma by showing that people can go in and out of stress, and also out of ranges of stress reaction frequently and based on a variety of factors. So again, the great thing about stress first aid, which I really love, is it gives people the ability or the okayness, if that's such a word, that stress is real. And it used to be like the elephant in the room that, like big stress, nobody's talking about it because, I didn't have that much sleep last night, but I could do this 12-hour shift. And, I only got an hour's sleep, but I'm gonna go out there and, take care of this, that, and that. So it's becoming more of a conversation, an okay conversation to talk about at the table, at the workplace, at home, in your own mind, so that way you're always thinking about, okay, I'm experiencing something, I need to do something about it, so that way it doesn't get worse. So what is stress? Stress can be defined as any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. Stress is your body's response to anything that requires attention or action. Everyone experiences stress to some degree. The way you respond to stress, however, make a big difference in your overall well-being. One of the most amazing things about stress that I learned about is that it's perceived. It's perceived. So one person's level of stress, or a stressor for one person, may not be a stressor for another. A long time ago, before I was a trainer, a teacher, speaker, I used to be so scared to be up here to talk. I'm one of those people that I'm just quiet. I just want to learn. I'll just kind of fade in the background. The thought of having to go up here and explain or talk or have people see me would freak me out. But then that changed because the nature of my work really required that I be out there in the community and to talk and to share what's really good. And so I kept stressing myself out by being up in front of people to talk and to be able to feel comfortable. So that way, eventually, it becomes second nature. So that perception of stress, eventually, after many years of stressing myself out, to stretch myself, to become a better version of myself, now does not stress me out. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so this definition is by the World Health Organization. So some symptoms, signs and symptoms of stress. When we experience stress, it could be, if it's as a small stress, maybe not so much all of these, but if it's like a moderate to severe stress, we could experience some of these. It could be that we might experience fear. When we perceive a threat, we act from a place of fear. Self-doubt. We forget our skill sets and what we are good at. And that's almost like an example. It could be that a new nurse graduated, maybe high honors, and really just passed her board, and here she is, she knows the basic skills of CPR. And perhaps she has a patient who needed CPR, and that could be enough to trigger stress and help her or make her forget the skill set that she knew about, which was CPR. And maybe at that moment, she might feel stunned. You know, the fight, flight, or freeze. She might feel, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So it might require maybe somebody more mature, somebody else with more experience to say, okay, let's get the code card, call the doctor, call respiratory, call this, call that, and then eventually, from just those reminders, it's enough to help her feel more in control and say, oh yeah, I know how to do CPR. I'll do compression, or maybe attach the oxygen to this person, or maybe help pass out the medication. So sometimes stress can help us or make us have self-doubt. Has that ever happened to anybody here? Yeah. Isolate. We forget. We don't forget. We become more defensive or accusatory because there's that feeling of maybe shame, or I shouldn't be stressed, or I'm just going to keep myself to myself. Feeling hopeless. We question our beliefs in ourselves and others. At times we lose our sense of meaning, and also discomfort, maybe physiological. Our heart rate might go up, our breathing may be shallow, we might get sweaty, we might get this feeling at the pit of our stomach, or we get a tension headache or a migraine. All these different discomforts that might come along with the signs and symptoms of stress. Everybody will be different. It depends on how you cope with stress and how little sleep you got the night before, or the type of interaction you just had with somebody. So everybody's signs and symptoms of stress could be different for everybody. So here's the continuum model. So remember earlier I shared that stress can kind of go in and out. So there's this continuum. You're not just stuck in one area. So in the green zone, that's when we're feeling like, okay, we got this. We're at our best. Whatever comes my way, I can handle it today. So the definition for that is optimal functioning, adaptive growth, and wellness. Some features of that is you're at your best, you feel well trained and prepared, you're capable, you're in control, you're physically, mentally, and spiritually fit, you're mission focused, you're motivated, calm and steady, having fun, and behaving ethically. Have you ever felt that before? Yeah. So sometimes we may wake up from a good night's sleep and we feel we're in the green. It's like you get out of bed, it's like, I got this. Good morning, world. It's like one of those things. Or maybe sometimes, maybe we get up on the wrong side of the bed and we might be at this yellow. Maybe we had a disturbing nightmare, or maybe you got a phone call in the middle of the night, or maybe you went to bed late because something happened and you didn't get the best quality of sleep. You didn't feel rested. And maybe you might wake up that morning in a state of yellow. There's a mild transient distress or impairment. That's a definition. It always goes away and you're at low risk. Causes of this yellow column here is any stressor. So maybe that stressor for you was not having a good night's sleep, or maybe having an argument with somebody the night before. Features, what might manifest in this yellow column is feeling irritable, anxious or down, loss of motivation, loss of focus, difficulty sleeping, muscle tension or physical changes, not having fun. Do people usually experience any of these when they experience some stress? Get irritable? Who gets irritable? Impatient maybe, overwhelmed maybe. You lose your motivation. It's like, I'm not going to do that today. I don't feel like it. Tomorrow. There's always tomorrow, right? We lose our focus. We kind of get distracted even more because, there's things in our head that's kind of like spiraling down, distracting us. And maybe that yellow column might make you had a bad night's sleep the night before. Maybe you're still carrying that tension or stress with you during the day, you didn't manage it, and maybe it's going to cause you to not sleep well again that night because that's what you have at the top of mind, and then it happens again the next day. So these are just some of the features of this yellow. But one of the great things about the stress first aid model is the fact that when you notice that you are not in the green zone anymore, but more falling into the yellow, you can do something about it. So one of the best things about the stress first aid model and also the window of tolerance, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, is the fact that it really encourages you to be more in tune with who you are. Being really so in tune that when you are off, when you're just feeling off, you can do something about it so that way you can feel on. Okay? So here, if we don't manage our stress when we're already in the yellow zone, there's a good chance that we're going to fall into the orange zone. So that's called injured, whereas the yellow is called reacting. The green is ready. So under the injured zone, the definition is more severe and persistent distress or impairment. It leaves a scar, an emotional scar, maybe not a physical one, really. We're at higher risk for really becoming more agitated, more stressed. Some of the causes of that is maybe life threat. Maybe you were driving in a highway and there's this car that almost hit you, and all of a sudden you're stressed, or maybe you were going down the stairs and you were thinking about something and you kind of stumbled a little bit, so something that would have threatened your health, your life, your well-being, or maybe a loss, Moral injury, wear and tear. I'll explain more about what these are in the next slide. Some of the features of what might manifest under this column is loss of control, panic, rage, or depression, no longer feeling like your normal self, excessive guilt, shame, or blame, or misconduct. So one of the keys to recognizing when you are under that orange zone is when you're hearing yourself say, or maybe other people saying to you, You don't seem like yourself. You don't seem like yourself lately. What's going on? So somebody that you love or somebody that really, you trust might say that to you. Or maybe it could be you saying it to yourself. It's like, I'm just not myself lately. I don't know what's going on. So anytime you're hearing that or questioning that, that should be a way for you to say, oh, I need to figure out what's going on so I could take care of it, so it doesn't get any worse. This red zone here is more for people who have an underlying mental health diagnosis, people with severe depression, manic depression, OCD, and they could be carrying on with their lives, but a stress happens to them, and it's hard for them to get themselves out of the rut. So under this category, these people will definitely need professional help, mental health counseling, or maybe a psychologist, a psychiatrist, somebody that they could really turn to professionally to help them be able to go back to maybe the orange zone or the yellow zone. Okay, so definition for the red column is clinical mental disorder, unhealed stress injury causing life impairment. So unhealed, this part here is not dealt with. It's unhealed, and it just becomes deeper and deeper and deeper, causing more despair. So some types of conditions that could put a person in the red zone is PTSD. Does anybody know what that is? Post-traumatic stress disorder. And there's a lot of that going around now because of what's going on with COVID, and not just COVID, now there's the war and all these different things that's really that we are facing. Depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, I should say. And features is symptoms persisting, worsening over time, severe distress or social or occupational impairment. So you've heard of first aid, right? Some people here are trained in first aid. First aid basically is a way to teach the bystanders how to recognize something that they could do something about before, maybe if it's a scratch, then there's a way to kind of put a Band-Aid on that. But if it's a deeper scratch, maybe a big gash, and there's like a lot of bleeding, life-threatening bleeding, or maybe an amputation, right? You know that first aid really can only do so much. There's a time when that particular person needs to seek professional help. That's the same thing when a person is in this red zone. There's just so much that the stress first aid can do. This person really needs professional help under this zone. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the stress first aid is really meant for a person to take care of their stress in real time. Okay, so it could also be something that you can implement in the workplace or at home, so that way you can do that for somebody you care about. If you're seeing that they are, not seeming like their usual self, maybe perhaps approaching them and doing something like helping them, maybe, listening to them or just being with them, and maybe helping them recognize those other resources that they can turn to help them. So here we'll focus more on the orange. All right, so 4 causes of the stress injury. The orange, again, life-threatening situations. It could be a traumatic injury. It could be due to the experience or exposure to intense injury, horrific experience, or death. And so that could be a lot of many different things. I was on Facebook earlier this morning, and I noticed there was a post there of somebody I work with. She had to go to Florida, Fort Myers, because her parents' home was, got hit from the hurricane that just happened. And that's pretty traumatic, a home being like flooded, and you're seeing all the pictures. It's usually on the mantle, but on the floor, and all these different things that can happen. So that's pretty traumatic. Pretty traumatic. And also, perhaps there's also a sense of grief under that situation too, right? Loss of a home, loss of all these different feeling safe. So grief and injury can also trigger the orange response. So it could be from a loss of people, things, or parts of oneself. It could be moral injury. So it doesn't have to be just traumatic injury, doesn't have to be grief or injury, it could be moral injury. Moral injury is due to the behaviors or witnessing of behaviors that violate our moral values. Okay, so that could be anything. I mean, under the health, well, during COVID, a lot of healthcare workers were really, the supplies were very low. We didn't know what we were coping with, this COVID thing. What is this COVID thing? Even though people called a lot of healthcare workers as superheroes, you know, there was just like so much moral injury because we were not able to do the care. We were not able to offer the care the way we were taught. We were not able to sit with the patient or hold the patient's hand or be able to really be there when they needed us because we had to distance ourselves because supplies were low. So we had to make sure that while the patient is safe in one room, with binoculars perhaps sometimes, looking to make sure that they're breathing, their monitor screen is fine, their EKG machine is fine, just so that we're not wasting, you know, the supplies that's limited. We're not, you know, hopefully transmitting any COVID to that patient, and we're able to move on to the next patient. So there's moral injury because it went against what we were taught. But still, we had to do the best that we could under that circumstances. Does that make sense? So that's another thing that could eat up at a person, feeling like, oh, I don't think I did my best, but you know what? I did my best under the circumstances. So fatigue injury is another one, just wear and tear. So again, examples of healthcare workers. I only speak about that because that's who I know, but as a nurse, you know, there's a lot of wear and tear on the doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, physical therapists, because it was just, it was scary for them to take care of the patients. They had moral injury perhaps, maybe some grieving, maybe they lost family members, or maybe they don't want to lose a family member because of this COVID thing. And they had to work long hours. Some of them they didn't feel safe going home, and they stayed at maybe local hotels or maybe extra rooms in the hotel because they didn't want to contaminate their family. So there's a lot of wear and tear. So this fatigue injury is described as due to the accumulation of stress from all sources over time without sufficient rest and recovery. Without sufficient rest and recovery. Had to be on all the time to take care of the patients, do their job, show up, be there for themselves, maybe their colleagues who's breaking down, having worse wear and tear. So just always having to be on. So now let's take a deep breath. I just want to switch to what's called the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is developed by Daniel Siegel. The window of tolerance is a term described to, what he says is, it's like imagining that we have this window. And if the window is nice and open, just like when you're feeling at the green, you're feeling good, you're open for anything, you can handle anything. According to the window of tolerance, your window is open. It's open to the world, to yourself, to whatever experience comes your way. You're feeling at your best. So he says that within the zone, there are really abilities for us to receive and process and integrate information. But what happens with the window of tolerance is when we experience stress, the window shuts down. It becomes more and more narrow. Just like when we experience stress, we kind of shut down a little bit, right? We get nervous, we get fearful, we doubt our abilities, we just start, getting overwhelmed, and, maybe, we bolt, we leave, maybe it's too much for us. So the window becomes narrower. So when we notice that the window is becoming narrower, it's good for us to do something to open the window up a little bit more, because usually that's what's the most comfortable for us when the window is open. So recognizing when the window has become narrow is very important, because once you recognize it, then you can do something about it. Okay, and that's when I'll talk more about the RAC. RAC is recognizing, acting, and knowing. So when you could recognize their window has become narrow, or you've been triggered, or there's stress, it's good to do something about it in real time, so that way the stress does not become more of a chronic stress. You don't carry that stress with you the whole day, into the night, into the next day, into the night, into the next day. And before you know it, it's like months later, and you've got this stress armor on you, and you just don't know why you've got this migraine. You don't know why you need extra Prilosec because your GERD is worse. You don't know why your back is hurting. Well, it's maybe because it's all these compounding stress that could have been managed weeks back, months back, years back. You just never know. Here's a little bit of an infographic from the National Institute of Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine. So here it is, the window of tolerance. When you notice that the window is becoming narrower or shut down, it's good to recognize that so you can do something about it. One of the ways that you could make it go up even more is taking care of yourself. Again, if it's beyond your ability to take care of yourself, perhaps seeking the help of a practitioner. And there are different ways people will react to stress. They can become hyper-aroused, anxious, out of control, angry, overwhelmed. The body just wants to leave. Or it could be the opposite, hyper-aroused. You become spacey, you're zoned out, or you feel numb, or you just want to sleep the whole day, your whole life away, because you just want to just not deal with it. So total opposites. But the whole goal is making sure the window is open. Here's the window. And again, when stress hits us, it can become narrow. So the idea then, when you're noticing that it's getting narrower, do something to expand it even more. So going back to the stress first aid model, and I don't want to jump back and forth, but I really wanted to emphasize how the window of tolerance is really one of the precursors to implementing the stress first aid. Because once you could recognize your window is shutting down or you are shutting down, then you can do something about it. And you can better implement the stress first aid model. It's a cycle. When you experience a distress or a stress, under the stress first aid model, it's good to check in with yourself. Again, recognizing, is that window closing? Somebody's moving that window. What's going on here? Recognizing, checking in, and then coordinate, doing something about it so that it doesn't become worse. So here, this is the 7 steps according to the stress first aid model. Check, coordinate, cover, calm, connect, competence, and confidence. So they use all these C's. It's almost kind of like a neutral or military-like term, because in the military, if they're out there, out in the field, maybe the military people in Ukraine or Russia, they're out there fighting for their country. And perhaps, there's bombing all over the place. They need to always manage themselves. They need to be able to really take care of their energy, their focus, their ability to handle what's coming up next. So they always need to check in with themselves, coordinate, making sure that they have all the abilities, their team is with them, making sure that everything's okay. If they need to, if things are unsafe, they need to seek cover. They need to find ways while they're seeking cover to calm themselves down, or maybe calm their peers down, and making sure that they're really fully connected as a team in order for them to move forward. And also making sure that they have the abilities, remembering their skill set, so that way whatever action needs to be taken, everybody's on the same page, and having that confidence that when they move, they all move forward together as one. I'm just trying to relate this, because it's based on the military action, how we can implement this in our own lives, at work, at home, for ourselves, is again, when you notice that you've been triggered, check in with yourself, what's going on, and maybe finding ways to really calm or take care of yourself, so that way you don't get into a point where you lose your ability to feel like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I don't know. Has anybody been so stressed that they feel like they don't have the answers, or they don't have, it's like, I don't know what to do? Have you ever gotten to a point when you say to yourself, I just don't know what to do? And then maybe you say, okay, I'm just going to table this. I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm going to take a shower. Or maybe I'm just going to talk to somebody. And then when you come back to try to address the situation, you're more relaxed and you feel like, oh, why didn't I see this? I could have done that. Or, oh my gosh, I should have done this. So when we're under stress, our ability to kind of recognize what we could do or solve problem becomes more narrow. So it's good to find ways to, again, widen that ability, that window, so that way you're more resourceful. One of the best ways, and a lot of you have attended my mindfulness class. One of the things I try to emphasize when you're practicing mindfulness is to become in tune with yourself. Being in that state where you're curious and you're really mindful of what is making you become off balance, right? Because the ability, our body and mind and spirit's meant to be at homeostasis all the time, in harmony. So if there's anything that knocks you down or over, it's kind of good to kind of be curious, okay, what was that? Something just kind of jarred me. Was it because somebody sent me a text and it was all in caps? Or maybe I sent somebody an email and they're ghosting me, or maybe somebody cut me off and I almost hit the guardrail. Or maybe, you heard something in the news again, another bad news. What is it? What is it? Being curious so that it's like, okay, all right, if it's the news that's upsetting me, there's a lot of things going on in the news, maybe I just need to take a deep breath, turn off the television for now, and just kind of maybe do something that's going to really feed my mind and spirit. Maybe I can go for a walk down the beach, or maybe I can go to the community center and see what people are doing. Maybe there's something I can sign up for there. Maybe I can go to the library. Maybe I can go to the movies, so maybe I can attend to my garden. So when you notice that you've been kind of jarred, or when you notice that your window is becoming more narrow, or your breathing is becoming more fast, and you're starting to feel like you're walking around like this, or you're rubbing your neck, or you're rubbing your forehead, or you're wringing your hands. You're like self-soothing, right? Okay, what's going on? Why am I self-soothing myself? What's going on here? So then say, oh, okay, I just feel maybe lonely. Or today's the anniversary date of, somebody, a good friend, and, this friend passed away. So being courageous enough to really attend to how you're feeling and labeling it will give you a chance to kind of say, oh, okay, well, I'll do something to help myself feel better. There's nothing really I could do about X, Y, and Z, but maybe I could do something to honor that particular person who passed, or maybe I could just do something to help myself feel good. Does that make sense? So it's all about becoming attuned and in tune with your body, so that way you're taking care of it like a good friend, and also taking care of it so that it becomes better. I invite people to check in on yourself all the time, even when you are feeling good. So that way you're always taking care of yourself. Because you mentioned that it's kind of hard to kind of keep checking in on yourself, or knowing when you're triggered. The best ways to do that is to do it all the time, having it be like on the forefront. It's like, how am I doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Okay, cool, let's rock and roll. It's like, oh no, I'm not feeling that good today. Okay, if you're not feeling good that day, don't push yourself. Don't push yourself. Don't take on more than you can handle for that particular day. Set yourself up for success. Set yourself up for success, because our best today may be different from tomorrow, may be different from the next day. So don't take on more than you can handle, is what I'm trying to say, especially when you're more on the yellow zone, the orange zones, especially in the red zone. So here, the essential skills for stress first aid, I've been kind of peppering that along. It's good to recognize when you are triggered, when your window is closing down, when you are closing down and just kind of like shutting down. Recognize when you or someone around you has a stress injury. So again, stress first aid is good to implement it for yourself, but it's also, once you learn it, it's good to be able to implement it to those around you, people you care about. So once you recognize this person's not feeling or seeming like they're themselves, or when you say to yourself, I just don't feel like myself today, do something about it. Do something about it. Don't say, later, I am busy, I'll take care of it later. It's good to take care of it right there and then. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It could be just as little as taking a nice deep breath. Nice deep breaths. So that way you help activate the relaxation response in your body. When you bring your breath down to your belly, your diaphragm, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest part. Mouthful? Is that a mouthful? When you take nice deep belly breaths, it'll make you calmer. So when you act, do something about it. Use your coping skills. Okay, everybody's coping skills are going to be different. Last time I taught this class, somebody said, oh, I like to exercise. Somebody says, I just like to go walk down the beach. Somebody says, oh, I just like to kind of like hang out with friends, or call somebody, or write something, or send a snail mail, write a card to somebody. So all these different things are really good to help you feel better. Approach that distress person. So approaching that distressed person. So it could be somebody around you, or it could be you that you are approaching or being in relationship with. So state your concern to a trusted friend, and maybe just have them kind of sit with you. There's sometimes, when you talk to somebody that you trust and you understand that they're not going to judge you and they're just there to listen, sometimes that's enough to kind of just empty your feelings. And perhaps maybe, you turn to your kids and they don't understand, maybe teaching them like, what, when I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, I learned about this SFA today. Do you know what that is? Well, let me tell you, it's stress first aid. So you can just explain to them, this is what I learned, it's a continuum, and there's ways that we can manage our stress in real time. And you know what, when I'm under stress, this is what I need you to do for me. Maybe you could just listen without correcting me. Or maybe you could stop saying, oh, Ma, that'll pass, it's okay, it'll be okay. That's sometimes they just need to, they're nervous too. They don't know what to do. And I'm a mother, I have kids, but my parents are still alive. So I'm in that sandwich generation. And I'm always trying to find ways to help them, help myself so I can help them better. Let me tell you, stress first aid, I've been implementing this, and that's why I love to teach it, because I know it works. But sometimes the children, they need to be educated in how the parent can be best supported. So just say, you know what, if I'm sharing something with you, don't interrupt me. Don't say everything's gonna be okay. I know it will be. I just need ears. I just need loving ears, somebody I could trust. Will you be that person for me? Because I would love that. Knowing at least 2 resources that you could use, so that when you do feel like, okay, I took my deep breaths, but I still need something else. Well, what are the other 2 resources? It could be the Kennedy Center. It could be going to church, talking to somebody, to a priest, or maybe going online. Maybe there's a support group out there for people who might be in the same situation. So knowing your resources is very important, because if you're triggered, you recognize that you're acting upon it. It's always good to know what else you could do, who else you can turn to. All right, so when you recognize, when you are in that state of like being mindful about how you're feeling, you're being in tuned, one of the questions you could ask is, how am I feeling? What is this? I'm feeling off. Sometimes kids don't know how they're kind of like emotionally illiterate in a way because the word stress is so popular. People might say, I'm stressed. Okay, what is stress? What is that? Well, I don't know, I'm just stressed. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Well, X, Y, and Z said something about me or, my clothes or my body or the way I did this. And, now I feel embarrassed. So now you're able to really tease out the feelings. I'm embarrassed. I'm disappointed. I'm mad. I'm angry. The more you're able to label all these emotions, the more you're unpacking them out of your mind and be able to kind of deal with it a little bit more. So what is it when you are triggered? When you are upset, you're going from the green to the yellow zone, from the yellow zone to the orange zone. Label your feelings. Are you easily frustrated when you're under that state? Do you feel more impatient? Are you agitated, angry, depressed? Do you have a stomach ache, headache? You feel sweaty? What else? What other feelings or emotions usually comes up when you're under stressed? Panic attack. Yes, panic attacks. And those things just come out of nowhere. And it's just like, well, what is this? All of a sudden the heart is racing, you feel nervous, and you don't even know what was going on. You were just driving along, maybe walking along, boom, it hits you. It just hijacks you, right? Yeah. Flipping out is spiraling out of control. And that's going to go into all the different signs and symptoms of stress I talked about earlier, like having self-doubt or losing your ability to feel like you got it within you to take care of yourself or others. That's just a scary feeling out of control. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that, taking a deep breath. Very good. All right. So that's recognize. Recognizing when your window shutting down. All right, so using coping skills. For those of you who have taken the mindfulness class, I like to teach the 2-to-1 breathing exercise because that's a nice way to regulate our breathing. Again, when we become really stressed, our breathing becomes fast and shallow, and it's just here. We want to bring the breath down to the belly, to the diaphragm, to activate the rest and digest part, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. So let's do that right now. Let's take a nice deep breath, sitting up straight. Sitting up straight. And if you can close your eyes so that way you're less distracted. And just noticing your breath first. Just noticing your breath. Being curious with your breath. Noticing, are you taking slow, deep breaths? Are you taking shallow breaths? Are you yawning? Just noticing your breath right now. And then let's begin the 2-to-1 breathing exercise where I'll count to 3 slowly, all right? And I'm going to ask you to breathe into your nose as I'm counting to 3. And then I'm going to ask you to pause for the count of 3. And then I'm going to ask you to exhale out for the count of 6, nice and slowly through your mouth. So let's do a few rounds of that. So breathing in through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. Out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do that again. In for 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, breathe in for 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do 2 more. In for 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3, out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time. In for 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. And again, just like at the beginning, just noticing how you're feeling right now. This is a good exercise. I asked you to close your eyes so you could focus, but I've used this before, stuck in traffic, running late. I know, knowing that I'm going to be 10 minutes behind on my schedule, so I would have to do this while I'm driving just to kind of really recognize I'm getting triggered, I'm getting stressed, I'm feeling like, okay, I'm going to be late, I'm going to miss my appointment, la 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 la, all these different things. So eventually, after taking nice, slow, deep breaths with my eyes open, I'm able to kind of feel, it's like, all right, I'm under control. I'll get there when I get there. I'll get there in one piece. Hopefully I didn't lose my slot in this appointment, but you know what? The name of the game is to get there nice and safe. So another coping skill besides using your breathing is walking. Walking outside, getting the fresh air. Really one of the best ways to really quiet this agitated or stressed mind is by doing something physical. We just did the breathing exercise, that's physical. Another physical activity could be walking. Some people go for a run. Some people put on 80s music and start dancing, So, whatever it is that's going to help you stop entertaining that rumination of stress in your mind, stopping it so that way it'll make you feel better. You could talk to somebody that you trust. That's very important. These are all actually research proven to really help you reduce your stress. Talk to somebody that you trust, maybe taking a nap. Maybe you haven't slept well for the last few weeks. And maybe that power nap is just something that you need. Have you ever had a nice power nap when you woke up? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I took it. Yeah. So taking a power nap, but not too close to bedtime, because then that's gonna make you fall, it's gonna wake you up. So taking that power nap strategically during the day, not for too long either, so that when you wake up you feel like, okay, I feel like a new person. Listening to music, praying, what else? Could be journaling, it could be crocheting, it could be, painting or drawing. She said sewing, so that would stress me out. So you mentioned a lot of different things there. So you're doing something for somebody, okay? That's kindness. There's a science of kindness that says when you do something kind for somebody, and I think I've explained this to other people, when people are feeling stressed or maybe depressed or anxious, studies have shown that when you do something kind, do voluntary work, that helps you actually feel better. Because again, you stop that rumination in your mind and you're actually thinking of another person, not this inner critic, this judgmental, crazy person in this head. You're doing something positive for somebody. So that's wonderful. And you're using new skills and you're doing something that's helping you feel good about yourself. So that's a great thing. So there's research out there that says for people who are overly stressed or depressed, doing a physical activity is very important. Because again, you're using your body to help you get, stop entertaining those thoughts in your mind. Sometimes I'm like, I just need to unplug. I just need to unplug. No, nothing. No phone, no TV, no computer, no nothing. I just need to unplug. Different people do things differently. And when you hear other people share, kind of gives you an idea of, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I might want to do that too, All right. So the coping skills. So knowing your resources is very important. Now, for those of you, later on I'll be doing this program for other people at Tufts. And at Tufts or different companies, they have what's called the Employee Assistance Program, EAP. That's a way for employees to call that number. And the great thing about this is it's, confidential. Your boss doesn't have to know, it's there provided for you. It's part of your benefits. So For those who are not working, maybe something similar to that could be going to church, place of worship, going to a mental health counselor. I wrote down supervisor again for those who are employed, but who else would you turn to? You mentioned your kids, or maybe people around here, right, in the Kennedy Center. Who else would you turn to?
My daughter.
Your daughter. Who else would you turn to? I was just thinking that, pet, yes. So pets are really good. Dogs, cats, Who would you turn to?
My husband.
Your husband, yep. Who would you turn to?
My
Caregiver. Who would you turn to?
My husband and my mom.
Right. Yeah. So it's always good to know who you could turn to, so that way when you're in that state where you feel like, I just need to talk to somebody. I just need to talk to somebody. Then you know who you can turn to. All right, so just going over what we just talked about. I talked about stress first aid, SFA. Explained what stress is according to the World Health Organization's definition. I described the stress continuum model. I talked to you about the window of tolerance. I explained how the stress first aid and window of tolerance can really support each other, right? And I shared the RAC, recognize, act, and know. So to help you managing your stress. One of the wonderful things about the stress first aid model is, because I do a lot of talk on resilience, what I learned is resilience is like one aspect, but before you get to resilience, there's the ability to use or implement the window of tolerance, stress first aid in order for you to recover. The recovering part is like where the resilience comes in, because the resilience is just not like a one-time deal. We're always like trying to strive to rise, right? In order for us to become more and more resilient and to rise, we really need to become more in tune and honor who we are. So that way we can take care of ourselves, the way we would take care of somebody we love. So turning that attention, those lens towards ourselves is so important. And that's where the stress first aid and window tolerance can come in. Okay, does that make sense? Because the more we can kind of take care of ourselves, the more we can really take care of the situation before it gets worse. And then when we do that, it becomes this like muscle that it just comes to us naturally. And then we become more and more resilient. So I'm going to say thank you to all of you who sat here and listened to me talk about stress. Oh, you're welcome, you're welcome. I hope that you are able to take away something from this program and start implementing it right away. A lot of studies are showing that stress really can trigger so many of these ailments, like diabetes or stroke or cardiac disease and obesity and all these different things. So they're linking stress as a precursor to all these different diseases. So the more we can address the stress, hopefully there's less of all these chronic diseases that leads to, worsening of conditions, So it's good to kind of know that and just realize that, yes, there's stress at work, yes, there's stress at home, yes, there's stress here, but just knowing how to take care of that is so important, so important. So thank you so much. I want to leave you with that.